I need you to imagine something for me. You're stepping off a plane in Taipei. The woman you love is holding your hand. You're about to meet her family for the first time. You've got the ring in your pocket. You're thinking about the wedding, the future, the life you're going to build together. Now imagine waking up 3 days later in a Taiwanese prison cell, beaten, confused, with no idea how you got there. And the woman you are going to marry? She's the one who put you there. This is the true story of Daniel Crawford. And I'm warning you right now, this is going to make you question every relationship you've ever trusted. Stay with me. Because what happened to Daniel over the next 4 years will haunt you. Daniel Crawford was living the American dream. 42 years old, self-made, he built a successful import-export business in Seattle, working with manufacturers across Asia. Good money, good life, but something was missing someone to share it with. That's when he hired Michelle Chun. She was 29, Taiwanese American, educated, spoke fluent Mandarin and English. She was supposed to be his personal assistant, helping him navigate contracts with suppliers in Taiwan and China. But over time, she became more than that. They'd work late nights, going over shipment schedules. She'd bring him Taiwanese street food snacks and teach him Mandarin phrases. He'd make her laugh with terrible pronunciation. It was slow. It was organic. It felt real. After a year, they started dating. After 2 years, they moved in together. After 3 years, Daniel knew she was the one. In February 2018, he proposed. She said yes. And 2 months later, she told him it was time to meet her family in Taiwan. Daniel was nervous, but excited. He wanted to do this right. He learned basic Mandarin greetings. He bought expensive gifts for her parents. He read up on Taiwanese customs. He even practiced the traditional tea ceremony because Michelle told him her family was old-fashioned. What Daniel didn't know was that Michelle had been playing him from the very beginning. They landed in Taipei on April 14, 2018. Michelle's brother picked them up from the airport. Quiet guy, didn't say much. Daniel chalked it up to shyness or a language barrier. They drove to a neighborhood Daniel didn't recognize. Not touristy, not suburban, industrial, warehouses, narrow streets. Daniel asked Michelle where they were going, and she smiled and said, "My family's restaurant. They want to cook for you." The restaurant looked closed, metal shutters half down. A few motorcycles parked outside. When they walked in, there were about a dozen men sitting at tables, smoking, drinking. They looked at Daniel like he was a specimen under glass. Michelle's father stood up, older man, cold eyes. He shook Daniel's hand without smiling and said something in Mandarin. Michelle translated. He says, "Welcome to the family." They sat down. Food came out. Daniel tried to make conversation, but nobody was responding in English. And Michelle's translations felt off, shorter than what people were actually saying. He felt the tension, but told himself it was cultural differences. Then Michelle excused herself to the bathroom. 5 minutes passed. 10, 15. That's when the police kicked in the door. I want you to understand how fast this happened. Within seconds, Daniel was face down on the floor. Guns pointed at his head, shouting in Mandarin. Zip ties cutting into his wrists. He was screaming, "What's happening?" "Michelle, Michelle." She never came back. The police dragged him outside, threw him into a van, and drove him to a detention center. No explanation, no translation, no phone call. For 3 days, Daniel sat in a holding cell with no idea what he'd been arrested for. When they finally interrogated him, it was in broken English. They showed him photos, shipping containers, invoices with his company's logo, documents with his forged signature. They said he was smuggling methamphetamine precursor chemicals from the United States into Taiwan. Daniel kept saying, "I don't know what you're talking about. I import textiles and electronics, not chemicals. Check my records." They told him his records showed otherwise. They had bills of lading, customs forms, financial transfers, all with his name on them. He asked for a lawyer. They laughed. He asked to call the U.S. Embassy. They ignored him. And when he asked about Michelle, one officer leaned in close and said in perfect English, "Your fiancée gave us everything we needed. She's a very helpful woman." That's when Daniel realized Michelle had set him up. If you're watching this and your heart is racing, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is far from over. Part 2 is already live, and you need to see how Daniel escaped and got his revenge. But first, let me tell you what those 4 years in prison did to him. Taiwanese prisons are not like American prisons. Daniel was put in a facility with 60 men in a room meant for 20. No beds, sleeping mats on concrete, one toilet, no privacy. The guards didn't speak English. The inmates didn't trust him. He was beaten within the first week. They thought he was a drug dealer, a rich American who thought he could buy his way out. They took his shoes, his extra clothes, everything. Daniel tried writing letters to the U.S. Embassy. He never got a response. Later, he'd find out those letters never left the prison. He tried to find a lawyer who'd take his case. No one would. Michelle and her family had made sure his accounts were frozen. His business was shut down. His assets in the U.S. seized under drug trafficking laws. He had nothing. No money. No hope. No way out. Months turned into a year. A year turned into 2. Daniel learned to survive. He learned Mandarin by necessity. He learned which guards could be bribed with cigarettes. He learned which inmates would trade information for favors. And slowly, through whispers and fragments of conversation, he started to piece together who Michelle really was. Her real name wasn't Michelle Chun. It was Chun Mei Ling. And she wasn't some innocent assistant. She was the wife of Wei Jiang, a high-ranking member of the Bamboo Union, one of Taiwan's most powerful organized crime syndicates. Wei Jiang ran drug trafficking operations between Taiwan and the United States. But he had a problem. U.S. law enforcement was watching him. He needed a front, someone legitimate, someone American. That's where Michelle came in. She'd been sent to the U.S. years earlier to build a cover, get a job, blend in, find a target. And Daniel's successful, trusting, importing goods from Asia was perfect. She worked for him, earned his trust, learned his business, got access to his accounts, his shipping routes, his suppliers. And over 3 years, she slowly built a fake paper trail that made it look like Daniel was smuggling chemicals. When it was complete, she lured him to Taiwan and had him arrested. The evidence was airtight because she'd created it herself. And while Daniel rotted in prison, Wei Jiang used Daniel's business infrastructure to move drugs into the U.S. Daniel learned all of this from a former Bamboo Union member who'd been locked up with him. The guy felt bad for him, told him the truth, told him Michelle and Wei had gotten married in a traditional ceremony a month after Daniel's arrest. Daniel didn't cry when he heard that. He didn't scream. He just made a decision. He was going to escape, and he was going to destroy them both. For 2 years, Daniel planned. He studied the guard rotations. He saved every bit of money he could from prison work programs' pennies, basically. He learned which inmates had connections outside. He made allies. He learned patience. And in March 2022, 4 years after his arrest, Daniel made his move. I'm not going to give you every detail of the escape, because honestly, it's a whole story in itself. But here's what you need to know. He got out during a medical transport. A guard had been bribed. A van was waiting. He was driven to the coast and smuggled onto a fishing boat headed for the Philippines. He spent 2 weeks hiding in Manila, sleeping in hostels under a fake name, waiting for a contact to get him forged documents. He had no passport, no money, nothing but rage and a plan. He eventually made it to the U.S. Embassy in Manila with a story about losing his passport in a robbery. It took weeks, but they verified his identity and issued him emergency travel documents. In June 2022, Daniel Crawford landed in San Francisco. He'd been gone for 4 years and 2 months. He'd lost everything, but now he was home, and Michelle had no idea he was coming. Here's what you need to understand. Daniel didn't come back to move on. He didn't come back to rebuild his life and forget. He came back for one reason: revenge. He knew Michelle and Wei Zhang were in the United States. He knew they were still operating, and he knew exactly how to take them down. But first, he had to find them. He started with public records, LLC filings, property records. Michelle had been smart, but not invisible. He found her name well, one of her names on a real estate purchase in San Mateo, California. A $2.3 million house bought in cash 2 years earlier. He drove past it, watched it, saw her pull into the driveway in a black Mercedes. She looked exactly the same, smiling, carefree, like she hadn't destroyed a man's life. Daniel's hands shook on the steering wheel, but he didn't confront her, not yet. He needed evidence. He needed to be smart. So for the next 9 months, Daniel became a ghost. He worked under the table, saved money, and he investigated. He found shipping records showing that Wei Zhang's operations were still using his old business connections. He found financial transfers linking Michelle to shell companies. He tracked down former employees who'd been threatened into silence. He gathered emails, documents, photos. And when he had enough, he didn't go to the local police. He went to the FBI. Now here's where I need to pause and tell you something. This story has a part 2. And in part 2, you're going to see how Daniel orchestrated one of the most satisfying takedowns I've ever covered. You're going to see Michelle and Wei get exactly what they deserve. And you're going to see how Daniel finally reclaimed his life. But before you go, I need you to do something. If this story gripped you, if you felt Daniel's pain and you want to see him win, smash that like button, share this video, and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this, stories of survival and justice, need to be told. Daniel spent 4 years in hell because he trusted the wrong person, but he didn't let that break him. He came back, he fought, and he won.